Hello everyone, McGee here with another draft battle analysis video and recap. This time looking at my week 1 match in the PGF, which is the Pokemon Grand Festival, a Dex league in which cut moves are banned and is otherwise a pretty straightforward league. I'm in the middle division, having had a decent application that they seem to have liked, and so I'm going to try to prove my worth in this middle division and look to see if I can advance into the top division in the next season. So before we get into this battle and really break it down, we're going to take a look at the team I drafted for this league, take a look at the team my opponent had available to them, and then the team I assembled to best address that. So I ended up with the number 1 overall pick for this league. I could have gone Dracopult, as you have probably heard me talk about numerous times in my XPDLA videos. I am not a very good pilot for Dracopult. I do not use him very effectively, and so I opted to look at other options. Dracopult also costed 20 points in this format, and you are required to draft 11 Pokemon. So all of that made him very unappealing to me as another chance at with the number 1 pick. And so I wanted to try something new, so I opted not to go with Mega Diancie, who I knew how to use, but instead looked at Mega Mawile. And then I figured if I could draft some good pivot to support Mega Mawile, he could be really, really oppressive in this format. And so I was really, really curious to see what I could do with him, just because he's such a great wall breaker, and I think I can pilot him reasonably well. Paired that with Landorus Therian, good speed tier, good typings, good immunities. Gliscor was unfortunately taken, or I would have picked Gliscor instead, but Landorus will do the job just fine. Very scary if you slap a scarf on it week to week. Rotom Wash, great pivoter, great speed tier, great typings, pretty much everything you could want. Some good defog to help the team stay hazard free. Florges, because I love this little flower, does a really great job week to week trying to wall things out, has the ability to be offensive if you want it to be. Greninja, I really needed a good speed tier above 115. I didn't like what was left on the board largely, and so I needed just to find something that I felt I could use well. And so Greninja does a decent job of that. It's got like a 121 or a 122 speed tier, which is really relevant for a lot of matchups. Good move pool, option to put up spikes or T spikes. Also pivots nicely into Mega Mawile, so I was a fan of that. Umbreon is just a really good wall wish support kind of mon. You can use Baton Pass in this league as like a dry pass, so I can wish pass onto Mega Mawile so I can continue to maintain momentum and get Mega Mawile more opportunities to oppress. Chestnut, I've been curious about Chestnut for a while. I enjoyed the spike stacking with Skarmory in my XPDLA league. And so I wanted to continue to utilize spikes because I think spikes are very, very hard for opponents to account for week to week. Most folks will throw boots on their mons that are prone to being hit by rocks. And so things that are grounded or otherwise not weak to rocks can be very vulnerable to spikes. And I wanted to see if I could continue to oppress that with a new mon. And then it has a really good defensive stat, really decent typing overall, so it has the edge quake protection you always want to have, so it can resist both ground and rock. And so I really liked what that could do. I picked up Meloetta again. I like what Meloetta offers a lot in most of its move pool because it has a decent speed tier at the 90, but you can also go into the Pyria form to get to that 127, I believe, which is really, really helpful in a couple of situations, especially if Greninja isn't a good bring. Also can pivot. Good fighting stab if I need it because Chestnut's not the most reliable fighting offensive type. Entei, really good wall breaker. Slap a band on it and click Sacred Fire. Things are not very happy. Scarf can get past a lot of things if you need it to. Basically the same thing with Regidrago as well. It was fairly inexpensive. In my experience with Regidrago, he can be more costly in the 8 to 9 point range. I saw him for 6. I did not have a dragon, and so I liked what Regidrago offered. It forces fairies to come, and when fairies are forced to come, Mega Mawile has an even better time because Mega Mawile presses fairies very, very well. So I figured that meshed well with him, and then it helped Entei as well as just another thing that fairies were going to struggle against. And then with the remaining 2 points, I opted for something a little niche. I picked up Trapinch because Trapinch can do some interesting things with a Reintrap. It has a 100 attack stat. You slap a band on it, you get in front of something that's weak to first impression, and then you just KO it with first impression. So there's potential to do a trap kill sometime this season if I can find the right situation for it, but I like to have that in kind of as the back option as something to play with. So that's the team I drafted. I'm generally content with it. There is a bit of a speed tier gap after 100 because I go from 100 with the Entei, and then my next one is Greninja at 122. And so I expect that gap will probably be exploited a little bit this season. It's unfortunate I couldn't really shore that up, but Landorus with a scarf really helps me get around a lot of things. So he's really easy to slap a scarf on week to week. So I figure I'll be okay, but it is something I'm aware of as I'm going into the season. Otherwise, I'm very content with the amount of pivot I got. Feeds really well into Mega Mawile, feeds really well into Regidrago, feeds really well into Entei. So some of my best offensive pieces have a lot of ways of attacking for free and getting on the field safely. So I'm looking to make the most out of that. In week one, I am facing Unforgiving Boy and the Boston Bruxious. Very, very scary, potent team. Zygarde, really hard to KO. I've using a complete one in my Ubers League. It's just a menace if used well. Mega Gardevoir can be really bulky. Galarian Zapdos can be a real painful wall breaker to deal with. Volcanion, really good typing, really hard to break as well. Magnezone, it's okay. It can do some trapping, so I have to be aware of that with my Mawile in this week because it could go for a magnet pull trap to just KO it. Rabombi, just for webs, not super scary otherwise. Amoonguss, really difficult to break, especially if I don't bring Entei. It just has a hard time getting broken by my team. Piloswine, not super scared of it. Doesn't really have a way to deal with my Rotom Wash except to poison it, so it's not having a great overall matchup. Archeops, not really scared of it. Sock, not really scared of it. Mimikyu, just because of the disguise, can really be a hindrance, but it doesn't have an overall great matchup against my team, so I'm not overly worried about what it poses threat-wise. So with that in mind, the team I kind of assembled for this week, Mawile, going with the Hypercutter as the original ability because I don't want to accidentally intimidate the Galarian Zapdos because of that Defiant nature, or Defiant ability, so I need to be very cautious of that. I believe I am sped crept to get past Piloswine with a little bit of extra just in case he creeps a little bit. So I should outspeed Piloswine really reliably. Um, the rest in HP, the rest in attack. Substitute because I see a lot of windows to substitute, specifically on Amoonguss because I force Amoonguss out pretty well. And Amoonguss has to be carrying Stomping Tantrum or it can't deal with Mega Mawile at all. Sucker Punch to give me some priority to deal with things like Gardevoir. Knockoff just is a really good spammable move. Same with Play Rough is just my really good stab option. Landorus with a Scarf. The speed is to outspeed at 263. I believe that's Volcanion in case Volcanion decides to Scarf. Otherwise, I'm not too worried about the speed tiers. U-turn just for momentum, Stealth Rock to get some hazards up, and then Edgequake just because that's a really good combination against his team. I believe just really the Galarian Zapdos is able to address that with some effectiveness. Otherwise, everyone's really, really prone to Earthquake, and so that can just be really spammable for me. Rotom Wash, pretty offensive. Speed crept again to outspeed. I believe it was the Volcanion, and then the rest into HP, some attack and special attack investment so it can do some damage. Volt Switch, Hydro Pump, Pain Split, and Defog, just because in case some hazards came up that I didn't want to deal with, namely the webs, I can get the webs off the field. Florges, really just a good, decent wall for my team. Pretty much max defense, max HP, a little bit sprinkled into special defense. Just a pretty standard Wish Protect set. Aromatherapy in case Toxic Stall starts happening, and then Moonblast just to keep myself lively. Or not lively, but being able to output a little bit of damage because Zygarde doesn't like that. Galarian Zapdos doesn't like that. So I can deal with some of the offensive options, especially the ones that could normally push through me because I'm full investment into that defense stat to give me as much bulk in that regard as possible. Greninja, I debated for a long time between Specs Greninja and Banded Entei. I think in hindsight, I regret not going with the Banded Entei. But I have the choice specs: Dark Pulse, U-turn, Ice Beam, or Gunk Shot. Gunk Shot very specifically to hit the Mega Gardevoir as hard as possible. I even sprinkle some extra attack stats in there and run a naive or a rash nature so that I can get some decent damage out with that Gunk Shot. I think it can do up to 80% to a very offensive Gardevoir. So if it's trying to go full offense, I can get it with up to 80% or something like that. Maybe get a poison and then it's off the field without too much trouble. And then finally, Chestnut, Rocky Helmet, Bulletproof, really great ability, Bulletproof. If you don't account for it and you don't check for it, you can run into issues where moves you expect to hit don't hit. Things like Shadow Ball can be shut down. Notably in this matchup, Sludge Bomb from the Amoonguss can be shut down. So if Amoonguss doesn't have Sludge Wave and it only has Giga Drain as another attack option, it has a really hard time dealing with Chestnut. Spikes, Spiky Shield, just to really punish switch-ins and really punish some of the physical attackers for attacking. Woodhammer is just overall decent damage. I debated between a lot of moves. I had Zen Headbutt for a while. I think in hindsight, I wish I had kept Zen Headbutt. I think it would have been very impactful in this matchup. And then Leech Seed to get some Leech Seed stall, which I regret carrying. I think Synthesis would have been a better call in the end. So that's the team I assembled. That's what I was generally going for. Just trying to wall out some of his offensive options and then exploit with Mega Mawile and Landorus and Greninja whenever I can get them on the field. And I had decent pivot to get those on the field because Landorus, Rotom, and Greninja can all pivot. And so I was just looking to make the most of that. So that's the team I assembled. We're going to get into this week 1 match. I'm going to play it on regular speed for now and kind of break it down. When I look at this team, my immediate belief was that they were going to lead with Rorombi and try to set webs off the bat. I'm going to make a decision I immediately regret, which is leading with Landorus. I think in hindsight, I should have led with Mawile. Mawile can sub pretty freely if the Rorombi leads. It can pressure out a lot of other things if they decide to lead. But overall, Rabambi is the thing I'm most wary of, and I'm not giving the Zapdos full accounting in the preview. And I make the mistake of leading a Landorus into the Zapdos. I proc the Defiant. I make it strong right off the bat. It Brave Birds, it KOs. Really, really disastrous turn 1. Tremendous mistakes on my end to give it that window to just be oppressive immediately. I regret that decision. Even Rotom was an okay lead because there's not a good lead against Rotom unless it's running Energy Ball for the Rabambi, and even then I can still Volt Switch and survive that and get back off the field and be okay and continue to have momentum. So I think I make a huge mistake on that turn 1, really just put myself in a bind right off the bat. Coming in with Rotom to force it out, I'm going to Volt Switch on this, come straight in with Mawile, click Substitute because I don't think that Amoonguss has a really good way of dealing with Mawile behind a sub. And it seems he does not because he immediately flees. I get that going with the sub. I get a free knockoff onto the Volcanion. Remove its boots, so I confirm it's not a Scarf set, which is, I guess, helpful to know in hindsight. Come in with Rotom, which just forces the Volcanion out again, back into the Amoonguss. I'm going to continue the Volt Switch, come right back into Mega Mawile and do it again because it doesn't seem that this Amoonguss has a way to deal with my Mawile. They're going to come back in with their Volcanion. I'm going to go for a knockoff yet again just to do more extra damage. Probably should have clicked Sucker Punch, would have done a slightly more, but I did what I did. The Amoonguss comes back in. I'm going to sub again because the Amoonguss just doesn't have a way of dealing with me. The Piloswine comes out. I'm going to knock off the Piloswine, take away its Eviolite, and then I'm going to click Play Rough here because that's the safest option for damage. So I've removed the Piloswine without too much trouble. I put the Volcanion really low down, so I'm really content with what Mawile's output has already been in this match. I would have liked for it to stay healthier to deal with the Gardevoir better, but I'm content with what it's done so far. I'm going to go for a Sucker Punch here, expecting Flamethrower, and I haven't revealed that. Unfortunately, he makes a really good call there, and so my Sucker Punch is ineffective, and I am burned. Both negatives. You got to come in with Florges and click Aromatherapy so that my Mawile is able to do some more damage in this match. I'm going to speed this up for a few turns here because basically what I do is I give this Gardevoir a window to set up. Really regrettable. I don't really have a safe switch in, especially now that Landorus is dead. I can try to get in with my Greninja to try to gunk shot it, and maybe I should be. I'm kind of just letting it set up freely here and not really pressuring it, but I don't know what else to do. I can't afford for the Greninja to take a Hyper Voice and just die, because if that happens, then I'm destroyed, and that really is game over for me. So I'm just fishing for a window to get it in safely and try to do some damage with that gunk shot. I get this crit. Crit gives me the window. I'm going to come in on that crit and then go for the gunk shot damage. Unfortunately, what I learned here is that it just has a ton of defensive investment, so it really eats that gunk shot really well. Sucker Punch also does not get the KO. Really big mistake. And so I'm going to do something. I'm going to bring back the speed to normal. I'm going to do something on this turn, which I really regret. All of that bulk should have informed me that it's not max speed. My Rotom is relatively speedy. It definitely gets past base 100s that are uninvested. And so I should be trying to come in with Rotom here as a way to see if I can nick off that last 5% of health. Regrettably, I come in with Florges expecting to survive the Hyper Voice. I don't. I get obliterated by it. And then Rotom comes in. Rotom does survive. Rotom does successfully Volt Switch on the Mega Gardevoir to get the KO. So I end up losing my Florges for nothing. Really big mistake. The Rabambi Moonblast here. Realistically, the Rabambi should Moonblast again. I don't know why it U-turns out. I think that's a bad call and gives me unnecessary life in this game. Because now my Rotom is back to 93% just because of how much health the Amoonguss has. I'm going to flee straight to my Chestnut. And this gets back to why I regret not having the Zen Headbutt. If I had Zen Headbutt, I'm just able to pressure out this Amoonguss. And if I have Synthesis, I can deal with the Giga Drains that it's trying to do, so I can stall out the Giga Drains. Overall, both are regrettable that I don't have answers to that. Volcanion comes back in. I'm going to flee to Rotom because it's my only option. And then I'm going to Volt Switch on this again because I know it's going to switch out. I'm being given unnecessary life in this game. Essentially, I can't break this Amoonguss unless he does something silly, like waste all his PP or misuses his moves. Galarian Zapdos comes in. I'm going to Spiky Shield just to do some chip to it. I see that it doesn't have a way of dealing with Chestnut, and it just U-turns out rather than Brave Birds. Not sure why, but I get some extra life off of that. I'm going to keep Spike stacking here because that seems the most appropriate course of action. I'm going to speed this up because what is going to end up happening here is that I'm not in a position to deal with this Amoonguss. It's going to Giga Drain me to get health back. I'm going to Pain Split to keep my health alive. Basically, my only chance of this game right now is PP stalling the Amoonguss out of Giga Drains, because if it runs out of Giga Drains, it can't do anything to my Chestnut, and I could actually PP stall it. And eventually he's going to figure out he can click Sludge Bomb pretty freely against my Rotom. And once he figures that out, I'm in a spot where it's basically game over. He gets the poison on the first Sludge Bomb attempt. Really bad for me. I don't have a way of dealing with that. I'm just going to keep Pain Splitting it, but the game is over. I can't deal with that. I can't deal with the Rabambi. Ultimately, I'm going to end up losing this game. I'll let it play on hyper fast for now. The Bulletproof does come in handy, does stop the Sludge Bomb. He did not account for that, so really good for me. The Amoonguss has Synthesis, so I can't even deal with that. All in all, I don't have a way of dealing with it. Unfortunately, I did not carry the Zen Headbutt. Zen Headbutt would have probably let me. Zen Headbutt plus Synthesis would have let me stall out the Amoonguss and force it off eventually and run out its PP. But I make the mistake of not running that set, so it is regrettable. Mungus comes in and does really good work against me. I made that huge turn one mistake that gave Galarian Zapdos a free kill and took out my Landorus immediately. I could have pressured a lot more with Earthquake in that game if I had kept it alive and healthy. I could have probably dealt with that Mega Gardevoir a little bit better. And then I ended up losing Florges for nothing when I could have solved that with my Rotom when it was at 5%. So I make a mistake there and then lose my Florges. If I had kept Florges alive, I'm able to deal with the rest of his team. I can stall out uh, the Amoonguss because I have Wish and I have Heal Bell, or Aromatherapy, I should say, to deal with any sort of stalling from the Amoonguss. I can Wish Pass onto the Chestnut to keep it alive, so I can eventually pressure it out and PP stall it if I absolutely had to. Galarian Zapdos doesn't really break what the pieces I have left, not well at least. And then Rabambi can't break the Florges if I had kept it alive, nor could the Volcanion. So I make that mistake of losing Florges for nothing, and that really does cost me the game. And I was still in a position to play it out and have a chance at it. So unfortunately, a regrettable start to my attempt at PGF. Kudos to Unforgiving Boy for bringing a really strong team and dealing with my pieces really well, making a really good turn one predict on my leadoff with Landorus, and then punishing me extra hard for it. So I start off 0-1. I'm going to need to adjust how I play to make sure my team is effective going forward. Need to recover from this. I have not ever started a league 0-1 before, so this is new territory for me. I need to make sure I get in the right mental state going forward to make improvements to that. But that's week one for PGF. I will be back with week two, so stay tuned.